thank you for being here with us. So my name is Jack Trappier. I am the Domestic Recruitment Coordinator. The Domestic Future Students Coordinator, domestic for the University of Sydney. It's wonderful to have you all here today. Today, we're going to go through a few different options, pieces of information, and some nice little tidbits and tips about the University of Sydney, why it could potentially be a really good option for you, and how we can help facilitate that as well. Again, as Samantha or Sam has mentioned in the chat, if you do have any questions, please feel free to put them through the Q&A box. Again, we will endeavour to get through as many of those as we can throughout the presentation, but please feel free to send through any questions that you may have. So on today's agenda, we'll be going through a few different factors about, or a few different areas about the University of Sydney, I should say. So we'll be going through university life at the University of Sydney, the University of Sydney Union, so USU for short, and the events and activities that are available both on campus and off campus for students. Sydney University Sports and Fitness Group, so SUSF. Again, there'll be a lot of acronyms, so I'll promise to go through them at length as much as possible. Work placement opportunities for students at the University of Sydney, flexible learning options and arrangements, the Academic Excellence Scheme, maths prerequisites, and accommodation. So we'll be going through all of this. Again, please feel free to put any questions you may have into the Q&A box. Perfect. So university life at the University of Sydney. So there is a multitude of ways with which students really enjoy and have an enriching time and experience at the University of Sydney. As a former university student myself, my key tip and or trick would be to get yourself involved in as much as you potentially can. The more people you meet, the more clubs and societies that you get to take part in, the more relationships you make with friends, it really does strengthen your potential professional prospects as well. But it also just makes university a much more fun and enriching experience. We have over 200 clubs and societies and growing at the University of Sydney. This can range from a guitar society to bridge society. Initially, I thought that it meant people who were very fond of bridges like the Harbour Bridge or Tower Bridge. No, it's actually Bridge the card game, which was a nice little thing that I learned. We also have some clubs about rugby union and sporting clubs and netball. We have language appreciation societies. We have a breakfast club. So there are a lot of different opportunities for you to really join or even create your own club and or society to really facilitate growth and involvement and encourage as much collaboration between students as possible. Again, we'll talk about sport and Sydney Uni Sport and Fitness very shortly. USU, the University of Sydney Union, will also be up next. We do have 25 plus cultural groups as well. So we do want to make sure that as many people as possible feel included or know that there are options and opportunities available for students to participate and partake in many different cultural groups and or societies and clubs. Again, if you feel like this hasn't been met for you as a particular student, you always do have the option to submit to create your own club and or society to facilitate that inclusivity at the University of Sydney. Perfect. So USU, the University of Sydney Union. So it is a not-for-profit organisation which was actually created in 1874 to help and assist with campus life for students. So it provides events and services, clubs and societies, and inclusivity within the University of Sydney student community. As mentioned before, some of our clubs and societies range from agricultural and technology clubs, sport and diversity, food and travel, and finance and animal clubs. Speaking from experience, getting to meet some of these people from different clubs and or societies is always a phenomenal opportunity to, again, really get to meet people outside of your own bubble or meet people outside of your own area. Obviously, right now with students learning remotely, it does make it a little bit difficult to kind of talk to or meet new people, but these clubs and or societies are looking to do a lot more virtually for their members and for new members as well. So keep an eye out if you do decide to enroll at USyd for any kind of club and or society. We've got a list on our USU website with which you can go through and see everything that is available to you as a potential student. Again, or if you think that it doesn't, or the number of clubs and societies don't meet what you're looking for, again, you can always create your own if you wish to do so. Some events and services provided by the University of Sydney Union include running events like Orientation Day or Orientation Week, and a few other things as well that are run on campus, usually in person, but obviously there are a few online events that are being run too, just to facilitate that communication and growth within the student community itself. So SUSF, Sydney University Sport and Fitness. So SUSF manages over 40 different sporting and recreational clubs. It organises sporting events and offers a range of facilities to students and the wider community. I can speak from experience as a staff member here at the University of Sydney. I participated in a mixed netball competition, which was great fun. Unfortunately, it was cut short due to COVID closing everything off a little bit earlier, so we couldn't get the championship in the end. But at the end of the day, it provided a phenomenal outlet and opportunity for myself and my colleagues in my Sydney Future Students team. We all got to participate in sport against other staff members, other students as well, and other external sporting people who wanted to compete at lunchtimes as well. So there are a lot of different opportunities. This can extend from, again, right in front of you, Taekwondo, to netball, to rugby, to soccer, to, I think, skiing and snow sports, to water sports as well, such as rowing and water polo. So again, there are a lot of different opportunities. Again, some of them are mentioned down below, like badminton as well, archery, water ski. There are a lot of different opportunities available to you. In terms of the facilities that are available to students through SUSF, the Sydney University Sport and Fitness Group, there is a purpose-built gym, a gymnasium / facility with a pool as well that is available on campus for students to participate in or to go to and use those facilities. There are a few gyms as well on campus, and there's one gym that is specifically allocated to our elite athlete and performers program. So the people who do have scholarships for the University of Sydney, but we do have 2 other gyms as well with which students can get memberships for and use that as your recreational gym. Obviously, right now, that isn't technically an option just because of how we are currently in lockdown and all gyms aren't in use. But moving forward, we strongly encourage students to participate and use this. It's always great to be able to study or do class, go to the gym, let off some steam for a little bit, really kind of, let that energy go, and then get back into study afterwards, or hit the gym before class or after class, before or after you do go home as well. So there's a lot of different options available to anyone who is a little bit more athletic or wants to participate in those or make the most of those resources, I should say. Perfect. So some work placement opportunities. So some University of Sydney courses give students an opportunity to complete additional programs that develop and progress your skills and experience. So the course areas include arts and social sciences, business, law, medicine and health, and science. Students can really take advantage of these, and it can be quite profitable in a sense for you to be a part of these programs. Just because, again, if you're going for your first graduate role outside of university or upon completing your course, and if you have completed one of these additional programs to develop your progress or to develop your skills and experience, and you're going up against someone who hasn't had this experience, you potentially may be viewed upon as more favorable for that position, since you do have experience and knowledge in that particular realm for the job you may be applying for. Again, it's not a guarantee that it's going to get you a job, that you do have the additional experience, but it does at least, again, give you some knowledge about how the potential industry that you're potentially going to work in works. It gives you experience as to what to expect from that particular working environment or from that particular organization. And again, it gives you great networking and resourcing opportunities to meet like-minded people or to meet people who have been in the field for either a short period or a long period of time, depending on where you are placed, and really picking their brain, getting to learn a lot more about them and their work that they've completed, and absorbing as much knowledge as you can. It might sound like a repetitive thing that may be repeated throughout the day from a multitude of different people throughout the University of Sydney, but meeting as many new people as you can and taking advantage of as many opportunities as you can is absolutely a phenomenal way to go as a University of Sydney student, or as any university student, I should say. The more people you learn from, the more people you get to know, the more people that you get to hear from and experience and really kind of absorb their wisdom that they want to impart, it can really help you in the long run to better understand either the industry that you are going into or what to expect when you do potentially work in a different field as well. Perfect. So we do have flexible learning options for our students at the University of Sydney as well. So you won't just be confined to a classroom, potentially that some of you may do on a day-to-day basis at school. Obviously, some of our high school students at the moment are remote learning, particularly, let's say, for example, our Sydney-based or New South Wales-based, to speak more broadly, and also some of our Melbourne-based students may potentially be learning remotely. So rather than having to, when classes do go back to in-person, whenever that may be, you will have the option, depending on what course you study, to be a part of lab learning or studios or stages as well, or have an open learning environment. Some of our classes at the University of Sydney are quite flexible, and they do allow for a lot of collaboration between students. So, taking them or making the most, I should say, of those flexible learning options and really getting to experience learning, not just in the standard setting or the standard format with which it usually is sit down at a desk, learn and read from a whiteboard or read from a projector. It is about experiencing and finding new ways to learn, but also meeting new people in these different ways as well. And again, we spoke about placement and internships as well as a part of your program that you may be able to potentially do for some particular course areas. So again, having placements and internships, which are available through majority of our courses at the University of Sydney, definitely can play a big part in your potential job prospects when you do graduate at the University of Sydney or do graduate from any university studies as well. It is very, very advantageous to make the most of these placements and internships. A lot of people do make really, really good professional connections from this. It may potentially lead to future employment in that particular company or organization. It may lead to another connection at another organization, branch, firm, health unit. It could be a school. It could be wherever you have done your placement. It could lead to another connection at another location or organization with which you can gain, or you potentially may gain, future employment from. So definitely make the most of placements and internships. Again, they may take up a bit of time, but the reward after completing it is absolutely worth it. And then again, interdisciplinary projects where you'll get to work with people from other courses is really, really quite a fun opportunity. Again, you're crossing paths with people who you may not necessarily talk to as much or get the opportunity to meet at all, just because you may be scattered around different parts of the campus as well in different buildings and or areas. So interdisciplinary projects really can be quite helpful in, again, expanding your network, really getting to learn more about different people, and getting to see that there is quite a wide range of people that do study at the University of Sydney. It's not one particular shape or mold or expectation. There's a lot of different students that come from different backgrounds, different countries, different socioeconomic areas. It's really just getting to learn more about people alongside the content you'll be learning in that project. Perfect. So something to keep in mind as well when you are considering studying at the University of Sydney is we do have this thing called the Academic Excellence Scheme. So the Academic Excellence Scheme rewards students who perform well in higher level English or mathematics in your relevant state and or territory. So right here, we've got the New South Wales HSC as an example. And then on the next slide, we'll have IB. But if you do advanced or extension English or advanced or extension maths, again, we do have on the slides here the required band unit or the band marks. So for those who are interstate and not from New South Wales, a band 5 is anything from 81 to 90. And then I believe so, yes, an 80 or an 80 to 89. And yes, 80 to 89, my apologies. And then a band 6 is from a 90 to 99.95. So that's what a band 5 and or 6 is. Band E4 is the equivalent for an extension subject as well. So please do keep that in mind. If you do go to the link at the bottom of the page there, sydney.edu.au/study/AES, which stands for Academic Excellence Scheme, you will be able to find the equivalent, or at least give you a bit more information as to what the equivalent would be for this. And then again for IB, which is our International Baccalaureate, that is done across the globe, hence the international pronunciation at the start. So the IB diploma subject would be either English A, Language and Literature, or English A, Literature. And then for maths, it would be Mathematics SL, Mathematics HL, or further Mathematics HL as well. And we show you the required results you would need to get to be eligible for the Academic Excellence Scheme. Again, for more information, tips, tricks, and how to use this to your advantage, definitely check out the link at the bottom of the page. Or if you do have questions, please feel free to drop it into the Q&A chat box, and hopefully we'll be able to answer it throughout or at the end of the presentation. So maths prerequisite is something that is, quite a substantial part of the University of Sydney. We do have prerequisites, but then there are also assumed knowledge components of courses and recommended studies. So in terms of separating those three key terms out, prerequisite is something that needs to be done in order to be eligible to gain entry into a course. So for example, the maths prerequisite is required for economics, education, with that being maths and science. My apologies, commerce, engineering and IT, medicine, psychology, pharmacy, science, and veterinary science. So you will need to meet the maths prerequisite, that being advanced maths or higher, or your equivalent state counterpart, in order to get entry or in order to meet the prerequisites for those particular study areas. Assumed knowledge means that you don't have to have studied those particular areas in high school or anywhere else. It just means that it is assumed that you will have some, at least foundational knowledge, or at least some understanding of that particular area with which you'll be studying, so that your teachers can continue forth and provide extra information or additional information or more advanced information than what you would already have assumed to know. So assumed knowledge isn't a requirement, but it is obviously very, very advantageous. And then again, recommended studies. It's not necessary, it's not a prereq, so it isn't a requirement for you to have studied those particular subjects or study areas. But again, recommended studies means that we do recommend you have studied this in order to have some foundational knowledge or have some better understanding if advanced or further concepts are brought up in addition to what would have been covered in those subjects. So it doesn't mean that you can't get in if you don't have those recommended studies or those assumed knowledge pieces. It just means that the learning curve may be a little bit steeper. But again, those can be overcome by bridging courses, through extra study yourself, or through extra commitment as well, and a few different ways. You can chat to your students, your peers. You can look for peer support services. There's a bunch of different ways with which you can get about it. If you don't currently study mathematics, there are a few different ways with which you can get into those particular courses. Let's say, for example, if you wanted to get into something like commerce or law, which both have a maths prerequisite. If you don't meet those maths prerequisites, what you can do is go into a course which does not have a maths prerequisite. For this example, I'm going to use, let's say, the Bachelor of Arts. If you go into the Bachelor of Arts, you can actually complete a handful of maths prerequisite units at the University of Sydney, which will then qualify you or give you that accreditation to say that you have completed your equivalent maths studies. You can then apply to transfer into that particular course, whether that be commerce or law. Again, psychology, pharmacy, science, vet science, economics, engineering and IT, medicine, whatever it may be, as long as you've met those prerequisites. Something to note though, if you are applying to transfer, it's not always a guarantee that you will be able to transfer successfully, even if you complete the maths subjects or the maths units, I should say, and if you meet the required GPA, particularly for some of our very, very competitive courses. This can include law or commerce or even medicine as well. There is a capped number of places available to students in every single one of our courses at the University of Sydney. Unfortunately, all of our courses aren't unlimited. We do have a finite number of places available, but it is still quite a large number to keep in mind. But if you do not meet the maths prerequisite, start one course. You then complete those maths units in your first year, apply to transfer, and successfully gain a high GPA. Again, it doesn't necessarily guarantee you entry into that new course. It may potentially be difficult just because there may be a lot of people also applying to transfer. So please do keep that in mind when you do go to meet maths prerequisite or when you do apply to transfer. Again, so this is the maths prerequisite here in a little bit more detail. So for New South Wales, the HSC, it is advanced maths and getting a band 4 or higher. And then for mathematics extension 1 or 2, it is a band 3. So it is a little bit different to the academic excellence scheme. Academic excellence rewards band 5 and 6 higher for advanced maths, but to meet the maths prerequisite, you have to get at least a band 4. So it is, one step higher, but at the end of the day, it isn't a huge step. It can potentially be as small as 10 marks, which is, again, 1/10 of the overall percentage. And then the IB equivalent, so maths, that would be SL5 or HL5, mathematics, applications and interpretations, which would be an HL4, and then mathematics and analysis and approaches, my apologies, would be a required result of SL5 or HL4. We do have a full breakdown on our website, so sydney.edu.au/study/maths, which will provide you the state or territory equivalent as to what subjects it would be you would have to complete in your final year of high school education, secondary education, and the results you need to get for that particular subject. Again, if you do have any questions or concerns, drop them in the Q&A box, and we'll be able to help you out afterwards as well. Perfect. So accommodation. So we are nearing the end of the presentation in terms of this portion. So after this, we will jump into some Q&A. But accommodation, there are a few different options available to students. You can be Sydney-based and be a part of accommodation at the University of Sydney. You can be interstate, you can be international as well. It's really up to you and the experience you want to have. So we do have 3 different particular areas which we want to let you know about accommodation. So we've got university residences. So those are highlighted with the full orange square or triangles, or I should say the houses. University residences are your typical university accommodation styles, where you'll have your own separate room, but you do need to provide your own food. It'll provide you with Wi-Fi as well included in those costs, but you'll have to do your own food and laundry and a few other things. Residential colleges are a little bit more expensive, but they provide your full breakfast, they do washing services, and they run a few more events as well for you that they organize themselves. Again, they are a little bit more expensive, so please do keep that in mind, that you're getting more benefit for more pay. And then we do have independently run student housing as well, which is another option for students. So there are a few of those dotted in and around the Camperdown and Darlington campus. So again, just keep in mind that there are a few different options available to you if you are looking to live on site at the university. For more information, I really strongly recommend having a look at our accommodation website. And we do also have some accommodation staff working open day today who will be able to answer your questions and or concerns. If you do have any questions again after today, please feel free to reach out via schools.outreach@sydney.edu.au, and we will be able to answer your questions there. But at the moment, what we might do is I can see that we do have a few people who have submitted some questions through the Q&A box. So hopefully we will be able to answer these questions for you. But if not, again, we will aim or endeavor to get back to you as soon as we can. So I'll go in order of them coming in first and foremost. So let's see, we've got one from Calvin Jacob. So we have, if lockdown continues, how will you be taught remotely? How will labs, tutorials, and all non-lectures be run? That's a phenomenal question, Calvin, and thank you for sending that through. So at this stage, again, the University of Sydney is taking a safety first approach and making sure that all of our students and all of our staff are looked after and are able to learn in a safe but also educational environment. So obviously at this stage, our students are learning remotely, given the fact that everyone is working remotely or learning remotely, unless they are kind of that first responder or part of those frontline services that are working to battle what we are currently going through right now. So at this stage, it is an online learning component. The university is looking at, trying to do this safely moving forward as well. The goal is to get students back onto campus as soon as we can, once it is safe to do so. But at this stage, we are currently abiding by current government rules, regulations, and standards to make sure that students can learn safely and effectively. In the future, this will obviously change once students can go back onto campus. But at this stage, things that are like science lectures and those kinds of things are currently just going through a little bit of change at this point in time. So what else have we got? We've got a few different questions as well. So are there single person dorms / accommodation? Do you have the option to be in a single room or with a roommate? That's a good question. From my knowledge that I do have, I do believe that all sort of rooms are individual. So I'm pretty sure that you do have your own individual single room. And then there are shared, obviously, lodgements that could be like a laundry room or a kitchen space or stuff like that can be shared with a few people or with many people. But for privacy reasons, I'm fairly certain that most of them are sort of single room dormitories or accommodation options. But again, it does depend on whether or not you go with the any one of those 3 kind of university housing options. So thank you for that. That's a good question. We have another question as well here. So does the University of Sydney care about how many extracurriculars you did when applying? You did many extracurriculars, e.g. musicals, choirs, public speaking, and wondering if you could let the university know of, or if it would affect your acceptance at all. Look, that's a phenomenal question. We do have a few different entry schemes that we did cover in the previous presentation from 11 till 12, the Pathways to Sydney course. So what I would recommend doing is going into the admissions pathways Q&A chat room through the Open Day page, and you'll be able to ask your questions there as well for that, as there are a few different entry schemes with which the university takes into consideration either academic achievement or a few other factors as well. So, obviously it is a case-by-case basis, and we do go through each applicant as each person is different. They've had different circumstances, you've participated in different things. But again, if you do ask or look at our admission pathways page or our admission pathways Q&A room today, hopefully you'll be able to get a few more answers there as well. So we've got a question here as well. So are there a lot of international students at the University of Sydney, or is it mostly domestic? That's a good question. So we do have a percentage of students who are international based, and we do have quite a large number who are domestic. Majority of the students are domestic at the University of Sydney. At this stage, obviously, enrollment numbers for international and domestic students have wavered over the last 18 months, just because of, a few international students not necessarily being able to enroll or actually be here in Sydney or to learn online, and vice versa. Same thing with domestic students. Some students have decided to enroll or apply for the University of Sydney at the start of this year, and then also defer their studies so they're not actually on campus as well. So the numbers do fluctuate year on year, but there is quite a good mix of international and domestic students. Again, going back to those points of interdisciplinary learning, you'll get to potentially cross paths with a few international students as well as other domestic students. So again, really getting to learn about different cultures and backgrounds and people can be a really, really fun experience you get to have at the University of Sydney. We do have a question as well. So what is the average cost of living on campus per week? Again, this does differ depending on what sort of accommodation or lodgement you do decide to go down. I wouldn't be able to give you those particular pricing points as they do fluctuate. And obviously as well, different people will have different requirements and needs. So some people might need to have, for me, for example, I definitely need to have a large amount of food on hand. So my cost of living would be a little bit higher for groceries, but then some people might invest a little bit more in their Wi-Fi connection if they don't have that provided for them, or if they want something a little bit more speedier for what they do. So for their studies. So if you do require, average cost of living, definitely check out our accommodation page, as we'll have more information there. And each one of our university colleges or accommodation sites will also have a little bit more information about the costs there too. So we do have a few questions as well. I'm just trying to make sure that I go through them in order of when they kind of come in. So my apologies if I'm jumping around a little bit as the questions are jumping around too. What is the social scene like in the University of Sydney just regarding COVID? Do most students focus on academics and studying, or is it being social, having fun valued as well? Again, as I mentioned at the start, we do have the University of Sydney Union, which does create a lot of different online and in-person events when COVID isn't a thing, when it is safe to do so. So at the start of this year, we had orientation week, with which there were students who were starting at the university. They got to come and experience, a few different festivities that I think pretty sure there was a few different sort of free ice cream vendors, a few different free food vendors. There was music pumping. On the first slide, you probably would have seen that there were bean bags as well. So we do have a lot of different sort of social events and activities that students do participate in. In terms of focusing on academics and or having social activities or having fun, that's up to each individual student. The more you put into your university experience, the more you'll get out of it. That's inclusive of your studies, but also of having fun. The more you get to meet new people and chat with new people and go to different events, the more you'll get to look back on your time once you finish university and really think about and see that you made the most of it and you really got to have some great experiences whether they were through attaining certain academic results or whether they were through, getting to meet new people at orientation or open day if you volunteer, or different events as well, and getting to make new friends that way. So I hope that has answered your questions there as well. So there are a few questions as well for like scholarships or financial support. So I'll try to cover that all in one big go. So there are a lot of different scholarships that are available to students. I believe it's over 100, excuse me, there are over $135 million worth of scholarships available to the University of Sydney students. That's both domestic, international, and mature age, postgrad and undergraduate, as well as research as well. So there is a lot of scholarship money available for you. My advice, again, apply for as many that you are eligible for. You wouldn't believe how many scholarships go unused every single year and how much money just sits there because students simply don't apply. And they think just because they don't meet a criteria point to an absolute T, or they think that there may be a better applicant than them, or just because they forget. Definitely have a look at our scholarships page. You can actually filter it all through so you can see whether it's for undergraduate or mature age or postgrad or research. You can also see for a particular study area or for sports, for merit-based or for accommodation as well. And you can have a look and really see what you may potentially be eligible for. Again, once you do find all those scholarships, make a note of what the closing dates are, what the eligibility criteria is, and also if you do need to have references, making sure that those references actually know that you're putting their name and details in your application. There have been instances with which people do apply for scholarships that do require verification from certain people. And then when those follow-ups or validation checks are done, people just haven't been authenticated or verified, meaning that they don't actually get the scholarship. So please do make sure that you are following the process accordingly, and have a look as early as possible. It's always really, really quite helpful to really know what you are applying for ahead of time, rather than looking at it and only having 2 or 3 days to apply for a scholarship. And obviously you can draft your answers and your responses to really give yourself the best opportunity to do that. We've got a question here as well. So is it possible to transfer to the University of Sydney after completing a year at another university, for example, UTS to USyd? Absolutely, it is a possibility for you to transfer from one university to another. It could be any uni to USyd, or it could be from USyd to USyd in between courses. So something to keep in mind is that obviously having 1 full year of completed studies is always advantageous, as we can use your university marks rather than your ATAR, which may potentially be better. But again, as mentioned before, we'll use whatever mark is better after that first year of study, whether that be your university marks or your ATAR, whichever gives you the highest potential or the highest percentage or opportunity to get into that new course at the University of Sydney. We will use that and take that into consideration when you apply to transfer. You may also potentially get credit for some of the subjects that you have studied at a different university. Obviously, that just depends on whether or not you're going to a similar course. If you go from, let's say, for example, a Bachelor of Visual Arts at a different university to a Bachelor of Law or a Bachelor of Commerce, or even a Bachelor of Medicine or the Bachelor of Arts, Doctorate of Medicine here at the University of Sydney, you may not necessarily get as many credit points just because of those very, very different study fields, and those units that you would have studied in the Bachelor of Visual Arts would be very, very different to those other 3 aforementioned course areas, being medicine, commerce, and or law. So keep that in mind, as sometimes you can get credit for some units you have studied previously. Other times you won't necessarily get credit. So again, just keep that in mind so that you can, really, I guess, just look into and see what the best benefit would be for you when you do apply to transfer. So where can you find available USyd scholarships? Again, if you just type in on Google scholarships USyd or USyd scholarships, either way, you'll be able to go to our scholarships browser and page. You'll be able to see them via postgraduate, undergraduate, research, or study area as well. So really do keep that in mind. But if you just type in Google USyd scholarships, you'll be able to go straight to that page as well. And then we've got a question here for Future Leader Scheme. How many courses can you apply for? So the Future Leader Scheme has a set number of courses that are affiliated with it. So when you do submit your application, you may submit, let's say, for example, commerce or physiotherapy as your preferred course area. And if you do gain successful accreditation for the Future Leaders Scheme through that, then it will reduce the entry score for that particular course. You just have to make sure that you have that particular course or a University of Sydney course that is affiliated with the Future Leaders Scheme in your UAC preferences. Preferably, you would put it as your top preference, but if you don't put it as your top preference, and then we get to your, like, let's say you put it as your third preference, then if it gets all the way down to your third preference and you've got that offer from the University of Sydney through the Future Leaders Scheme, then you'll get that guaranteed placement. If you put it as your first preference, then absolutely guaranteed placement. If you put it as your fifth, for example, and then another course above that gets offered to you, you only get one offer per round through UAC. So please do keep that in mind. If you do have conditional entry or conditional offer through any university, or particularly the University of Sydney, if you do have conditional entry, but you think that you want to put different courses first, just because you've got that in your back pocket, if in the off chance you do get another offer from another university prior to getting the University of Sydney one, then again, you will only get that one offer per round. You won't get two offers per UAC round. So please do keep that in mind. My recommendation is always put your dream course or your absolute tip-top course at the very top of UAC, just because it's giving yourself, the best opportunity possible to get into that course. It's no point of putting in all your preferences and then thinking afterwards, oh, I really wish that, I put my third preference as my first, because if I got into my first preference, then I definitely would have gotten into my third, which was actually my favorite. Put in the course that you want to get into the most as your top preference. I cannot stress that enough. It is a really, really, really important thing to do. Just because you don't want to finish the HSC or go through UAC as well, and go through wondering, could I have gotten into a different course? Could I have done something else? Really just keep that in mind as well if you do go through UAC, or if you do want to apply for a particular course. And I can see we've got two questions as well back to back about, can we watch the sessions back if you missed any? Or yep, so if you do miss the sessions, these are being recorded, so we are able to assist and help distribute them further. But for more information about that, check out our Open Day website after Open Day, and you'll be able to find more information there as to where you can either watch back these recordings or find further information again after Open Day. All right, so we've got a question here from Johanna. So we've got, when reading a personal statement, does the University of Sydney care more about the student's aspirations and personal story, or more about their academic achievements and ability to study? Phenomenal question. And if I may say as well, the University of Sydney looks at all aspects of an application. Some of the more important things, rather than talking more heavily about your aspirations and personal story, more so than academic achievement, or vice versa, rather than talking more about your academic achievement and ability to study more so than your aspirations and personal story, is just being genuine and authentic. The number of people who will put through an application which reads very much like a Stephen Hawking novel, or something very, very something very pre-rehearsed or pre-written that doesn't sound super authentic, is not going to sound as authentic as someone who is being very genuine and true to themselves. And it very much reads that way in a lot of different applications. So my answer to that would just be true to yourself, being honest with your application, and being genuine and sounding like yourself as much as you can do. Obviously, don't write and have slurs or iterations or anything like that. Just making sure that you are really just kind of making sure you're being true to yourself, being honest, and really putting yourself in the best light, putting yourself forward in the best light, I should say, and highlighting your academic achievements and your personal story as much as possible. But again, be authentic, be yourself. That would be my advice, rather than it one weighing more than the other, whether that be personal story or academic achievements. So how many ATAR points do you get when you get a band 5 in English IBHL? So I'll try to go back to that, if you'll excuse me. My apologies, my PowerPoint just decides that it wants to freeze a little bit. So again, my sincerest apologies. Here we go. So for band 5 in English IBHL, so it just depends again, it required results. The academic excellence scheme, it depends on the course that you are applying for. Again, at the University of Sydney, you can get up to 5 adjustment factors depending on your result that you do gain in one of or either of those courses. just because you wrote English IB HL, I'm not too sure which one out of these two you do study, Leanne. So I would advise, again, it's a band 5, or required result would be a 5, 6, or 7 in those. So I hope that has answered your question as well. What maths units would they be specifically in the arts degree? So I'm assuming that is a question related to transferring into a course that does have a maths prerequisite. Again, this does change. I don't have those maths prerequisite subjects or those particular maths units in front of me, just because, again, some require calculus, some require maths inclusive of physics, some require, a little bit more in terms of like theory or pragmatical maths as well. So definitely have a look at what the maths units would be in the course that you do want to go into. And then you should be able to find them or something similar in, let's say, a Bachelor of Arts or a different course as well, where you can pick up those maths units. So hopefully that has answered it. But again, going through each particular course guide, which you'll be able to find on our website, seeing what maths units you do need to do in that course, and then meeting those prerequisites would be an advantageous thing to do at this point in time. Do people who want to become teachers have work placement opportunities? Yes, absolutely. So work placement, my apologies if that came through. There's a train station nearby. So if people do want to become a teacher, whether that be primary or secondary or early childhood, there are placement opportunities throughout your degree. So the hours and days will obviously vary from year to year. But again, this is organised by the University of Sydney for you, so you won't have to go out and find these yourself. But yes, there are opportunities to do work placement and have that sort of prac work done throughout your studies so that you do graduate with experience. So I'll quickly go back to our final slide as well. So if you do have any questions or concerns, you can put them through here as well. Again, someone has asked, hi, are there work placement opportunities for education courses? Yes, so as previously mentioned, you will have placement opportunities throughout different education courses. Why does the academic excellence scheme only apply for English and maths? So that's a good question. The reason being, or from what my understanding is, English is a requirement of all, at least New South Wales-based students. From what I know, or from what I've heard as well, it's a requirement for all Australian-based students to do English in their Year 12 studies. So that's why that's there. And then maths as well, we have the maths prerequisite at the University of Sydney. So to my understanding, that is why it's only English and maths and not every single subject. I can come back with further information about that at a later point in time. But again, to my understanding right now, that is why the academic excellence scheme only applies for English and mathematics. Is there or are there other ways with which you can get around a maths prerequisite for a bachelor you want to do besides MOOC? Again, yes, if you do something like a Bachelor of Arts or a different course with which you can satisfy and do those maths units in your first year, then that is another way with which you can do those maths or meet those maths prerequisites and then get into the course that has those maths prereqs. The MOOC is always an option. We tend to let people know about the other alternative pathways as well, just because the MOOC is the massive online open content or massive online open course, which is what MOOC stands for. So really acknowledging and knowing that it is quite an undertaking as well. And we want to make sure that students feel comfortable doing this, because trying to really cram in, 2 years worth of math study in high school into what can be, it is self-paced learning. Some students do decide to blaze through it quite quickly. So trying to do that all in a 2 to 3 month window at your own pace can really lead to, burnout, or it can be quite a lot of information to have to absorb and retain and use as well in the final exam. So there are a few different pathways we recommend other than the MOOC as well. But obviously, if you want to go down that MOOC pathway, definitely do so. Are there scholarships for accommodation? I think I covered that. Yes, there are a few different scholarships for accommodation. So if you do want to find those, please do look at our scholarships web browser. And you will be able to filter and find them there. So I've got a question here from Charlotte. Oh, my apologies. This came through right at the start and I didn't see it. So when applications are being looked at, what school results and mark would they look at in particular, or is your submission mainly performance and interview based? Look, I'll try and cover it broadly, just because different courses have different areas with which they look at, and different entry schemes look at different components. So for example, if you're doing, let's say, the Sydney Scholars entry scheme, that requires you to put through your latest scores or test scores, or if in New South Wales, it requires your trials. Some trials have obviously been cancelled for some students, or they've been delayed, and you won't get your results in time prior to them closing in September, the applications for Sydney Scholars. So what you can do instead is put your year 11 results and a few different results as well, or your mid-years from year 12 as well. But then for other applications, whether that be, let's say, medicine, for example, or dentistry as well, you do have multiple mini interviews, so MMIs, that you will have to do, or an interview stage that you will have to do prior to actually gaining admission to a course. Even for music or art, you will have to either do a performance or portfolio-based aspects to gain admission to those courses. So again, it's not just results and marks. We do look at the body of work with which you can present to the University of Sydney to really kind of show that you excel in those particular areas. So I hope that has covered it. I know it was a bit of a broad answer, but it's just, it's a very broad question as well. So hopefully that has answered it as well as possible. And my apologies that it took so long to kind of get through to that question. Does MOOC occur before you start university? So again, MOOC is an online self-paced learning option. I do believe that the next test is in January, which coincides with what I think the latest results, or what the latest release dates are for the HSC. So from what my colleague Scott was saying earlier today, I think it was announced, or it's been said somewhere, that the middle of January is when the HSC results or offers will be made. I will just need to check about that, so don't hold me to it, please. Please check, obviously, the UAC website for further details when that is released. But again, you don't necessarily have to do the MOOC, but the test is in January. If you do successfully complete that, you can then apply once you finish the MOOC exam and get your results to satisfy that maths prerequisite to get into a course at the University of Sydney. But from my understanding, the MOOC exam is in January. With the maths prerequisite, is there a set band needed to be reached in the HSC to be considered as a course that is completed and eligible for the prereq? Yep, so we had a table here. So this is the maths prerequisite here for Lydia. So if you do maths advanced or extension, these are the results that you do need to get or higher. Unfortunately, standard maths or general maths is not, for New South Wales, is not accepted. It has to be advanced maths or higher. But these are the results you do need to get. Again, for anyone who is wondering about the maths prerequisite, please do look at sydney.edu.au/studies/maths, and you'll be able to find more information there about interstate equivalents in terms of subjects, interstate equivalents about the required results, and a few bits and pieces there as well. We are nearing the end of the session with about 2 or 3 minutes left to go. So again, my apologies if we don't get around to every single question or concern. Please do feel free to send them through to our schools.outreach.edu.au website, my apologies, email address, and hopefully we'll be able to get back to you as soon as possible. We might have time for one more question. So I'll try and find one here as well, just because there's a lot of different questions here. So a good question to finish off on. Will you only be offered courses that you have on your UAC application? So if you're not, again, you've only got 5 preferences through UAC, and that is for all the different universities, or for most universities in New South Wales, at least all of the ones that run through UAC. So if you do wish to be eligible for a particular course for entry, yes, you'll have to have them on your UAC application form or in your UAC preferences. If, for example, you don't list a Bachelor of Commerce or a Bachelor of Engineering as one of your preferences, and that's what you want to get into, again, the university doesn't know that you want to get into those particular courses if you haven't got that listed on your preferences. So again, you will need to have the course that you do want to potentially gain admission into as one of your 5 preferences in UAC for any particular offer round, for you to be offered a place in that course, or for you to potentially be offered a place in that course. If you don't have that if you don't have that course, or a course in particular, listed as one of your preferences, again, it won't necessarily be considered because we don't know that you want to actually do that course. So I hope that has answered that question for you. With that, that does bring us towards the end of the session. It is just about 12:55 now. So thank you so much, everyone, for being a part of this today. We really do appreciate you being here virtually. We would have loved to have done this in person, but obviously circumstances have made it a little bit difficult to do that. If you do have any questions or concerns, please feel free to send them through to our email address at schools.outreach@sydney.edu.au, and we will endeavour to get back to you as soon as possible. Obviously, we've got a lot of people coming through Open Day today, so even if you have more questions as well, feel free to jump into one of our Q&A chat rooms today, and hopefully either myself or one of our team members and staff members will be able to assist you further with that. But on that note, thank you again. Stay safe, have a great Saturday afternoon, and hopefully we'll see you on campus shortly. Enjoy your afternoon. Goodbye.